All right, I'm going to work on something a little different. Not because it's a chunk of rock that's different from my usual stuff, but because it's going to be a blunt. And I'll discuss what I know about blunts, which is not that much, even though I've tried to find information on them. It's usually pretty common to see that the idea is a blunt is most likely a scraper. If you look at the archaeological literature, they tend to lump these blunts in with scrapers, you know, for preparing hides and stuff. But a blunt can be used for hunting, just like a regular point. Oh yes. But I'm just going to make one. It's also assumed that blunts are resharpened, broken projectile points. You know, the projectile point breaks. So instead of wasting it, you just blunt one end. It'll be sharp, but it won't be pointy. It'll be quite rounded. So they assume that it was a broken point, and they just made it into a blunt. But I don't see why you can't just make a blunt straight away without relying on something to be broken first before you can make one. The advantage of a blunt is that the tip won't break off. Yeah. How common are they? As far as I know, they're not all that common. But you find them in almost every assemblage. Major assemblages. You might not find them on every site, but they can be found in many different areas. Now, what material is this? This is Owl Creek with concrete. Owl Creek chert from Texas with a bit of concrete in it. And during the artifact videos, there was one big turtle-backed point that was made from this stuff. I don't know which video in the series that was. It was in the Pedernales point series where there was a big old turtle-backed point made of this stuff. And they discarded it. Because I say that because it did not look finished, and it had massive step fractures and a big old turtleback. Anyway, I chose this because it was just hanging around in my box of to-do pieces eventually. Right, I have a box where I have a bunch of pieces of bifaces and pieces of rocks and chips and different things in the box. I just throw in stuff occasionally. So this was something I threw in a while ago, and I didn't want to get back to this dance blade yet, the upper half yet. So what do? I had a request to discuss blunts. Yeah. So they do come in various sizes. So the big ones can be used as knives. Yeah. And nothing says they cannot be used as scrapers, because they do work as scrapers. But usually the hafting on a scraper is well, as far as I know, it's usually like an adze blade. Heavy duty scrapers, as far as I know, are hafted like adze blades. Lightweight scrapers, you don't even have to haft them. You can just use a stone like this to scrape. That's why I say heavy duty scrapers or hafted like adze blades. You can use a blunt just in your hand. You don't have to haft it if that's what you want to do, if you want to scrape something. I guess not too many people talk about blunts or how to make blunts. They're just pretty straightforward. Mostly people want to know, is this a blunt or is it not a blunt? What is it? They find artifacts with rounded tips. Very short, you know, there's no tip. Did it break or did they make it like that? What do they use it for? Is it actually useful or is it just an expedient tool? Is it something you make from scratch or is it just something that once in a while someone gets the bright idea and, you know, it's not that popular of an idea? Is that true? People want to know all these little details about blunts because maybe they have a bunch of them in their collection. Yeah. I've seen collections with lots of them. I've heard about collections with lots of blunts. If they're doing a lot of hide processing, I've seen these scrapers used for lots of hide processing. And they are like adze blades. They're not like blunts. If they're going to do some heavy duty production. During historical times, a lot of tribes were still using stone tools to scrape hides with. They switched quickly over to the weapons of the day, the muskets and stuff during first contact. They quickly switched to metal knives and muskets for weapons in most areas. But for processing hides, they still use stone in many areas. So we do have documentation with hide processing techniques, well documented. And as far as I know, they don't use very many blunts in that type of, or during those times. I'm trying to think here. Where have I seen? You know, there was a time where I used to read everything I could on the internet, but I never wrote anything down as far as the source. And then, you know, you get online, you start talking about something, and it became a thing to ask for the source. Where is your source? What's your source? I don't believe it. I need a source. And of course, no one has a source. So people will say, that's BS. No source, that's BS. Which is true in many cases. But if you're just someone cruising the internet, you're not going to write down all your sources. You may read up to 500 different sources in one day if you're astute. Just to write down 500 sources takes a long time. Just to write it down or type it in and make sure it's correct. Or copy and paste links and make sure those are correct. I've copied and pasted the link and it didn't work right. So you're going to make sure that the links work well. That sort of thing. It takes time to do that. And then you've got to put the keywords in with your sources. You just can't have a web address sitting there. You got to type in the keywords that you need in order to reference that source. And one source could have many different references. It could discuss blunts. They could discuss bone knives and bone artifacts in the same source, but you only write down blunts, and you forget that it's also got discussion on bone artifacts, and you remember it has bone artifacts discussed somewhere in the sources you did that day, but you didn't make the note. You know, you just wrote down blunts. You didn't put the bone artifacts underneath it. So, and someone asks you, "Can you show me bone arrowheads, please? Because I don't get any on the internet. I don't see good ones." And you go, "Oh yeah, I just saw a good reference on bone artifacts. Where is it? Where is it? Is it number 376? Is it down here near 401, or is it number 15? Which reference did I do today? Or did I look at today?" You don't know. They basically want sources just to drive you nuts, because they're not going to change their opinion. Yeah. On forums where everyone knows what they're talking about, and you get some dingbat come in talking some ignorant stuff, and everybody knows he's wrong, right? He doesn't go, "Oh, I apologize, I was wrong." No, they just sink back into the distance, and all you hear is crickets. And he just finds some other forum to spout his ignorance. Yeah. That's what happens. So it's not even worth keeping track of all the sources. The one that asks for the source is not going to change their opinion. They just want to bug you. In my experience, right? Who knows? Maybe one of you guys is a source savant, and you know all the sources, and you can immediately reference your library, and no one gets past you. That's a person who spends all his life on the internet. Not many of us want to do that. No. And when you know, a lot of these internet people are confronted with sources, they go, "That's not reliable. No, you're just not enough. It's only one, you know, that's an outlier, blah, blah, blah." They find an excuse to downplay your source. I know the game. I used to play it. I used to take a lot of time hunting down sources and trying to respond to replies with my sources. Didn't do any good. In most cases. The only time it does good is when you're not really talking to some rando on the internet. If it's someone you know and then they want a source, that's a whole different ballgame. So I try to provide sources for people that I know. Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame than the anonymous cool guys on the internet that can speak and write without typos. Yeah. A lot of times you know it's a real person if there's typos. It's not a bot. Bots are actually pretty good at spelling stuff. Right? They don't make spelling mistakes. I should just leave the step fractures in, right? Because I've seen a bunch of points with step fractures. But we don't really try to imitate artifacts on this channel. Nope. Alright, so we got a preform. Okay, and it's got a point on it. Now what kind of point, what kind of projectile point or knife or something do I want to make with this and then make it blunt? It doesn't matter. I could do a peternalis. I got tired of looking at those. Well, not tired, they start to become redundant. Yeah. If you have a lot of one type of artifact, it becomes redundant after a while. You get to see, yeah, I've seen this variant before, I've seen this and that, blah, blah, blah. Am I going to break the tip off on purpose? No, I'm just going to round it off on purpose. I'm not going to break it. Although I could try to snap the tip off. It's not that hard, actually. To intentionally snap the tip off. Yeah. Not that difficult. All I gotta do is do this. Pow. It snaps the tip right off. I could try to match the thinness on some of those peternalis points. Although you haven't seen real thinness yet. Oh no. I got artifacts that are thinner than those peternalis points, with edges that are better as well. I'm going to do an experiment eventually with a bunch of napped points with nice sharp edges and notches and stuff, and I'm going to throw them all in a box and I'm going to tumble it around and I'm going to go mix it up and I'm going to try to damage the edges a little bit, as much as I think those artifacts were jostled, and then take a look and see and test all the edges and see if there's a difference. See how damaged the edges get. Yeah. To see if it actually was the jumbling around inside the bags and the containers that caused the edges on my artifacts that I've borrowed to seem dull. They're not nearly as dull as this. This feels smooth. Those artifacts don't feel smooth, they just don't feel sharp. It's in between. They're in-betweeners. Yeah. And I'm judging their sharpness because I know I can get them sharper than that. And when you're using antler pressure flakers to sharpen, you can do an excellent job sharpening with an antler pressure flaker. In fact, some people prefer to sharpen their edges with antlers, so it can be a superior tool than steel or copper when sharpening. So there's no excuse for them back in the day to not sharpen their edges. They must have just been in continuous use and only expediently sharpened, and they didn't really care too much that they were maintained if it's not the jostling around inside the boxes and bags that they're being stored in that cause the dullness. If it's not that, that means they just neglected to keep the edges sharp. That's it. It happens. Same nowadays. You keep a pocket knife or a knife on you. Do you keep, what's the percentage of guys that keep it razor sharp at all times? I know I've let mine go lax. The one I've got right now in the car, I haven't sharpened that, and I just used it to cut up some liver for one of my dogs, and it was dull. Like the ligaments in the liver will tell you that how dull it is. So I got to go sharpen it. So I know it's easy to slack off on the sharpening stuff. Actually, it was not one of my dogs. We're babysitting a little pup. She didn't like the liver. No, so I had to give it to my cat. And then I ate the rest of it. You know, a package of liver. I give some to the dog first. The puppy didn't like it. Didn't want it. My cat likes it. Anyway, that just goes, you know, I'm just mentioning that because it's easy to excuse the original flint nappers for their lack of keeping things sharp, just in case that's the thing, you know, just in case that's it. They just didn't maintain them. Not all of them are dull. Some of the artifacts are sharp. But for the most part, it feels like the edges are not sharp. Like there's just some wear or some neglect or some neglect to sharpen or finish out the pieces. There's no smooth grinding like this though. If there was smooth grinding, I could see, well, this must have been an intermediary stage where they hadn't sharpened it fully. They just ground it down and set it aside. All right, so I need to make a blunt. I need to make it more narrow. Yes, no? I already ruined the tip. Let me think here. Yeah, let me make it more narrow. You already seen how I can make it thin and wide. So let's just make it more narrow. Why? Because most points are narrow back in the day. So damage tip. We're going to assume that this one is going to be a reworked damage tip for a blunt. And maybe impact damage on the side like this. You hit a rib bone all the way down and got all messed up. Yeah. I need to get out my reverse indirect percussion stuff. Put some notches in this. Or should I just do the regular nachos? Nachos. Regular notches. Yeah, it's pretty dinged up now. Okay. Not that I did it on purpose. I didn't do that one on purpose. Let's see, 23 minutes. That time goes by quickly now. I'm used to doing hour-long videos. Yeah. Let's get the indirect percussion things out. The reverse indirect. Hold on. Why don't I just keep this thing ready to go at all times? It's because it gets in the way. Yeah. gets in the way. My shop is pretty small. Okay. And I like it that way. Everything is within reach. Except my stump for reverse indirect. Oh, I forgot. I got a gift. Yes, I did. It's a Notch-O-Matic. It's a cheater tool. He calls it a Notch-O-Matic. I'm going to put a link to who you can get these from. Okay? I can try to do the notching with the Notch-O-Matic. I thought it was pretty cool, and I said, man, I can do some nice cheating on the notches with this. But for now, we're going to do the reverse indirect. I'll do the Notch-O-Matic in a little bit, or maybe on a different video. But I'll put a link to where you can get these from. If you haven't seen it, it's a vertical punch, but it's a spring loaded, like a little piston. It works good. I already tried it. Yeah. All right. Where was I before I crudely interrupted myself? Rudely and crudely interrupted myself. Can you see? Did you see the eclipse today? No? Yes, you did. You saw the eclipse. I know you did. If I saw it, that means everybody saw it, because I'm the last one to do stuff that everybody else does. I'm usually the last one to do things that everybody else does. But luckily we got some viewing lenses at the last minute. Safe to view eclipse lenses. Yep. That one hit me in the eye, just below my glasses. So when you do this at home, boys and girls, you do this away from you. I'm doing this toward me because I'm on video. And inquiring minds want to know how to do this. So I've got to keep it facing toward the camera. I'm not that good at it yet, but I'll get it eventually. Dang it. I need to do a blunt on these notches. It's a blunt notch. Yeah. Trying to do them fast. That's what I get. That's what I get for trying to do the notch real fast. Well, look at that. We got some options now. Which way we want to do this? I'm not even going to try to figure out why that snapped so easily. It's high quality rock. That's probably why. And the tip probably needs to be more tapered so it doesn't get thick so fast, because I think what I did was I it went into the notch and it broke off that big old piece. Anyway, maybe the Notch-O-Matic would have been better. Okay, let's see. We got to stick with this piece. What am I going to do with it? I got to stick with it. Yeah. All right. Let's go back to our regularly scheduled programming. How many of you guys have tried the reverse indirect? I bet you only 5% or less of my viewers. That's okay. I'm not going to make fun of you. Oh, maybe I will. Maybe I will make fun of you because only 5% are doing it. I know. I just know it. You're already set in your ways if you've already been napping. Yeah. Or you just watch it for entertainment. It's kind of fun to watch a new method, even if it does blow away one of the barbs. At least you know it's not straightforward easy. Even though I did make it look easy on some other material. It's because the other material is awesome. This stuff is unpredictable and is kind of delicate, even though it is raw. And that's a lot like that yellow jasper, that mookite, that mustard mookite. Yeah. This naps a lot like that mustard mookite. I don't know. I kind of wanted to make a symmetrical point. Yeah. This kind of ruined my day. Stupid reverse indirect. Nothing says a blunt has to be symmetrical. No. I made some new foreshafts. So now instead of 2, I got 5. Oh yes. So it's going to fit in one of these. It better. I know it does fit in that one. Or do I got to thin it? I got to thin it to fit in this one. Okay. Let's thin it. It's going to be missing a barb, just like one of those broken artifacts. It's going to have one of the cheesy little basil notches to thin it down. Come on. I know you can do it. No one uses that term cheesy anymore. Cheesy basil notches. They used to use the term lame instead of cheesy. They use the word lame. Just one of them lame basil notches. Still too thick. See, this was designed after one of those petrodalis points. It was pretty thin. It won't fit in that one either. It requires another pop out somewhere. Might be saying, just make the blunt already. Just make it. Yeah, I know. You can advance the video to the end. You don't have to watch all this. Voila. Is it thin? It will be. Oh, yes. It shall be. I nap through that spot right there. I think it did it. Yes, it did it. Yep, and you got a bunch of these foreshafts made up ahead of time, right? All you nappers got a bunch of foreshafts made up just like they did back in the day. If you don't have a bunch of foreshafts made up, you're not doing it like they used to. Because you got to fit. You don't build a foreshaft around each point. When you're napping your points, you make sure they fit in the prefabricated foreshafts that you've got like 20 of these set aside. All the same. And you get your points out and you insert them into the haft. That's how you get regularity in the stems. You have prefabricated foreshafts. That's how you get the regular stems. One of you guys made the comment that the collection I have is, very consistent, morphologically identical, basically. That's because they're going after, in my opinion, that's because they've got prefabricated foreshafts of all the same size, and they need to fit their nappings into it instead of making a foreshaft for each point. They make a bunch of foreshafts ahead of time. And there is evidence for that because they've found caches of foreshafts in dry caves in the Southwest. So we know the basket makers did it. The basket maker culture in the Southwest. They would pre-manufacture bunches of foreshafts, especially for their arrows, the true arrows. Wood doesn't survive very long from the archaic and earlier, so we don't have very many of those. But anyway, see if I can do a barb on this side and make it look like it broke off on the other side. Yeah, because I'm going to do a blunt that I'm going to assume was, rehafted and shot. Yeah, it doesn't have to be made into a scraper. You can stick it back on the lateral dart foreshaft and shoot it. Oh, yes. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a way to thin it down a little bit more, but I shouldn't worry about it. Probably going to break it again or make it all crackly. Yeah. Come on now. Dang, it is all crackly. No wonder the guy had a turtle back on his. When this stuff does not want to flake, it does not want to flake. No wonder that one artifact was all nasty. Yeah, this stuff can be stubborn when it wants to be. Come on. My goodness. It's inconsistent. That's what it is. It just doesn't nap the same in that one spot. Okay. I'm wondering why I'm having trouble. I think it's because what I'm trying to do is get through this phase fast, but it doesn't work that way. I've got to do the Flintknapping the same every time. I can't be too expedient. The blunt itself doesn't take long to do. Just downward pressure is enough. That's it. You might say, that's it? That's it. It's blunted already. That's the way they look. They're not fancy sharpened. They're just downward pressure. That's it. As far as I can tell. On the ones that I've seen. Do they have a barb sticking out? I don't know. Maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't. I don't know. I don't think I have any blunts in my collection. Although I take that back. I think there's one that I remember. At least one. Come on. I want to see if I can get that step fracture out. Or that mess of step fractures. Dang it. It will not go. I'm going to hit it super, super hard this time. Make it or break it. Nope, it missed. My goodness. It's been a long time since I've had that much difficulty. So in review, what do we know about blunts? Not necessarily from this video, but what do we know about blunts? We know that people always ask, what the heck are they? What were they used for? How did they make them? Why did they make them? Do they actually work? What were they used against? Maybe they're points they used for target practice? Yeah. They're shooting bundles of sticks with them just for target practice? Maybe. Does anyone out there have a blunt with a barb? Because I can sharpen that up and it'll penetrate a hide, you know, enough kinetic energy, and it will work. See, this side is a little more cooperative. Oops, even though it has concrete. Take that back. Yeah, so blunts are usually rounded on the tip. Yeah. And made from something that looks broken. So it looks broken, right? It looks crude and broken. That blunt can be sharpened really well. Just like a regular sharp edge. And just with downward pressure. And yes, you can use downward pressure with antler. Yep. We're going to make that barb silly delicate, just like the artifacts. Silly delicate. So, in review, like I was starting to, blunts, I think, were not used for dressing hides. I think they were used for shooting. Maybe in rare cases you can turn a point into a scraper, but I think they were still shot at animals, even though they're blunted, unless they've got use wear on the tip. Some blunts are very, very dull. Now, is it advantageous to have dull blunts? Yeah, I suppose if you don't want to penetrate the prey, if you don't want it to go through or cut, it's always possible you could just not want to cut, but why wouldn't you just use a piece of bone or something? Maybe it is easier to use stone in that case, because bone does take a while to shape enough to get it hafted. Well, why can't you just use wood, you know, just carve the wood with a stone tool? If you wanted to dull this a lot and then shoot it, it would be probably more advantageous to use a piece of wood or just sharpen your stick and then grind down the tip so it's not like pointy sharp, but it won't penetrate. This will break. That's the disadvantage of a stone tip. So the advantage would be to have it sharp, and then it still penetrates. It'll still work. And you haft it to the foreshaft. That's not the right one. Where is it? Look, I had five a minute ago, right? This is what ADHD does to you. Where's the fifth one? I don't know. Uh-huh. It's down there. Look. It's down there. Yeah. It rolled off the stump. So this is the one that I need. Yeah. Although it's too deep, but it does fit. See, this notch is a little bit too deep because it's made for a pattern analysis. Anyway, I would just put it on a, a ladle dart and shoot it again. Why don't I put a point on it? Because maybe I don't want to put a point on it because I already broke one point off. Why try to break another one off? Or why leave it up to chance to break another one off? I don't know. There's many different reasons. And every excuse that you can come up with to make a blunt, that's probably one of the reasons. Yeah. I don't see why not. There's probably 100 different reasons why you would make a blunt. Anyway, this was a roundabout way of doing it. I wanted to work this piece of stone because it was something I had in my collection and something that some of these artifacts are made from. And I can see why they have trouble with it because it's very, very inconsistent. Even though it is mostly high-grade raw stuff, when it doesn't want to cooperate, it doesn't want to cooperate. And it won't. It will not cooperate. So yeah. Me, I would just use it again as a projectile point. Or a knife. This works as a knife. Yeah. And you just pull this out of the dart shaft and you can use this as a knife. Ryan Gill on Hunt Primitive has used these short at ladle dart foreshaft things as knives, and they didn't like them as much as a full handled knife. Big handled knife with a big blade. They didn't like these for knives, which is fair. They probably don't work as well, but that's what I would use it for. The two things, I would shoot it or I would use it as a knife. Not as a scraper. No. I would not use it as a scraper, personally. I would not use it in place of wood. If I had a choice to use wood, I would use wood. I would use stone either to sharpen it so that it can penetrate again as a projectile point, or sharpen it so it can be used as a knife. That's what I would use it for. Yeah. All right, so 52 minutes, almost an hour. Habits are hard to break. But yeah, that's it. The humble blunt. Alrighty.